Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show you guys a weave, a chainmail weave that's called like a captive or an orbit, or I don't really know what to call it, so I'm just going to show you guys how it looks. What we're going to need is an 18 gauge 1/4 inch ring. Here I'm working with bright aluminum, and there'll be links for all the tools and materials down in the video description below as well. I'm using my favorite pair of pliers. I have some bent nose pliers and some flat nose pliers, but you can use whatever you prefer. And then for our beads, you could, for this ring size, you could totally use like a 6mm faceted bicone, but I've found that these oh, what size is this? They're glow-in-the-dark tracer BBs. I'm not sure. They're like a 6mm, 5 to 6mm BB. So there's all the info on there. But I'm just going to take the cap off and get ourselves out some, just here in a little dish. And I really prefer using this style of bead as opposed to a drilled bead because they're seamless and there's no holes and they glow in the dark, which is super cool. But we're going to start. You can see here I have a bunch set up of 2 open and 2 closed per unit. And here I'm going to set up the 15th unit. So to open the rings, what we would do, let me just angle this a little bit more, zoom in for you guys so you can see what I'm doing, is I'm just going to grip the ring in my pliers. I get a much better grip holding it like this than if I were to hold it like this, just because it's holding on to a larger portion. And some people enjoy using their bent nose pliers positioned like this too. So just because I'm showing you the way that I like to do it, don't hesitate to do a bunch of different things and experiment and find what works best for you. So I am going to take it and open it. You only really need like maybe a 45-degree angle. That's as wide as I think you'll ever need it. Need the ring to be opened. So there's one open. And just to demonstrate again, there is 2 open. Just like that. And then for closing a ring, you take it and you can see how they're kind of offset a little bit from each other. The goal is to get it to be, you can almost hear that clicking. That's just the edges of the wire of the ring butting up against each other, but you want to get it to get the look as seamless as possible. I coil and cut my own rings, and the saw blade that I use is 1/100th of an inch in thickness, but it still removes a little bit of metal, so you'll want to kind of push inward a little bit whenever you're closing the ring. I'll demonstrate again because you can kind of see on this one, you know, off to the side, you can see that little itty bitty bit. And so if you just kind of crank them together without pushing them towards each other, you can see that little bit of space is still there. And so to avoid that, you can see I'm just kind of over pushing. And that's how I get a nice smooth closure. And that's my goal every time. So to start, what we're going to do is I'm going to put my 2 closed rings onto 1 open ring. And I'm going to close it. And also, again, I can never emphasize enough, this is just the way that I do it. It's all about the end result, so do whatever it takes to get you there. And I'm taking another open and threading it through the 2 that we just worked through. So now I've got 2 hooked onto 2. And I'm going to take one of these rings, which are also an 18 gauge, but the inner diameter is 1/8 of an inch as opposed to a 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to open it, and I'm just going to hook it here onto the end. And get a nice good closure on it. I apologize for all the traffic noises. It's a beautiful day outside, so I have all the windows open. So now you can see here, the first couple of like links in this weave are the hardest to do. So I'm going to take these and actually kind of open them up one to either side. And then open it up this way. See how it's kind of just sitting like that? And using the bead will actually help hold everything in place. So I'm just going to set the bead there. Like this. and kind of push down. So you can see how this is kind of holding everything together, and this little ring's kind of out of place. I want it centered between the two rings. So you can see now from the side. And I'm just going to push up. And so you can see how it's holding that captive. And something that you can do is you could actually hook another ring through here, right here. I would actually double up just to make good and certain that it's together. And have this just be a bead link in between other gemstones or other chainmail links. But I'm going to show you how to make a full chain of it. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to take one of these open. I'm going to hook through both of those. And I'm going to put my two closed on there. And I'm going to close. Be slow and steady with it at first. You know, make sure each and every closure is just as good as you can get it, because it's a lot easier to just get it right the first time than it is to try to go back and fix everything. And then I'm taking another open ring and threading it through the 4 that I just threaded through. So now you can see how that just dangles and is a captive bead. Sometimes these weaves are called orbits because the rings are just kind of orbiting around the bead. And so the next step is I'm going to open these guys up and then open these guys up. And it can kind of be a little precarious at first. Things are going to flop around. It's going to be a little weird. I kind of just cup it with my fingers like that. By putting some pressure on these two rings, it holds them in place, and then these guys just kind of relax over. And then I'm just going to set a little bead in there and then bring these two over. And you can see that one got snagged in between those other rings. I try to keep that from happening so that you can just kind of position it. And you will start to get the hang of it. Something that I find that makes it a little faster for me is if I take my two closed rings and go ahead and mount them onto one of the open rings. Because now I can just pick that up, thread through, and then close. And then I'm going to thread through right where I just did, and then add these two rings on, and then close. And then I'm going to grab it. I'm going to let these guys fall open. Sorry, I don't mean for my fingers to get into the way. And just open it back up into this position here. Grab another bead. And then, oops, kind of popped out on me. So that happens, but we can do this. Yeah, the biggest part is to just make sure that these rings here, sorry, I did not mean to start deviating off of camera, don't get tangled. So again, just be patient with yourself. Then hooking on another ring, and that's how that chain is starting to look. Now, I prefer to do this out of steel whenever I'm working with just an 18 gauge, because over the years the bracelet will hold up much better. But I am guilty of making this quite frequently out of anodized aluminum because I think it's so pretty. You just have to keep in mind that it might be a little bit more delicate. And so I'm just going to continue kind of placing everything. Placing in that bead. And then bringing those two up to each other. You can see I think it makes a really beautiful chain. And grabbing and hooking and closing. And once you get that down, you just keep doing it over and over and over again. So this is probably one of my favorite weaves for making jewelry in the booth for bracelets, because with a limited, like with just the 18 gauge bright aluminum, if you have a bunch of different bead colors, you could make a bunch of different bracelets, you know, that all look just a little bit different, but just from this just one technique. And 6mm bicone Swarovski crystals work pretty perfectly for this too, because some of my 6mm gemstone beads just don't fit in there very well. Like, you need like a very small 6mm, if that makes sense. Because especially with the hand-cut gemstones, sometimes they say that they're 6mm, but they're like quite on the large end of what qualifies as a 6mm. But then sometimes you'll get ones that are on the small end of a 6mm and actually closer to a 5. So experiment with what you have and just see what happens. Now let's see. I'm gonna do, how many units is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 6 units long. I'm gonna go ahead and do 10 units and see how far that got us. Just so that, you know, if you're working in the same ring size as I am, you'll know how many units to set up for making, you know, kind of per inch. And 10, I think, is a nice round number. Though really, I guess I could just look and see at what 5 is. So to finish it, if I were attaching a clasp, I would set that down. I'm going to open up another one of these smaller rings and hook through these two. And it would be onto this ring that I would attach like a lobster claw clasp, or if I had a hook and eye or a toggle clasp, just whatever closure of my choice. Like magnetic clasps are super cool. So yeah, just whatever you want, and then close it. And then if this were a completed bracelet, you'd be able to just join the ends together. You can also, if you wanted to make a cute little ring like this for a pendant, instead of hooking that ring through there to finish it, I would have removed this one and opened these and kind of hooked them together and had just a kind of stiff little ring. Might actually work better with 5. No, 5 would have been floppy. I like the 6. But you can experiment with it and see what happens. You know, and just kind of join those two together like that. But always feel free to follow your inspiration and see what happens. Hey y'all, thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial. I do hope that it was helpful to you. If you have any questions, comments, ideas, or requests for future videos, please leave them down below. And if you would like to share pictures of what you've made, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and like DeviantArt and stuff. All the links for that will be down in the video description. As well as if you enjoy my free tutorials and would like to support the creation of more of them, as well as participate in my fairy house giveaways, my monthly craft crates, and all of the different things that we do here at Back to Earth Creations, please check me out on Patreon. Again, links down in the video description below, and there might be something popping up on the screen on either side where you can go, and I actually like screen captured a walkthrough for how you can become a patron, which can be kind of helpful because sometimes I don't know what I'm doing on the internet. But yeah, so I'm glad that I finally got to share this technique with y'all, because it's like, in no way or form did I come up with this technique, but I really enjoy doing it, and I had some requests for putting it into video form, so here you go. Also, if anybody knows the name of the original creator for this weave, please like let me know so I can give them credit. But in the, oops, it's very durable. But in the meantime, I hope y'all have an excellent day and happy craft, and I'll see you guys around. Mwah! Bye!